What is identity? Identity is a pattern that the boundary of self, I, or ego attaches to, bonds to, identifies with. So if we look at the background here, we can see that there's a boundary. The boundary is here, and then out there is the rest of the ecology, is everything else. And that boundary is what we call I. And the pattern is what I identifies with. So when we say me, what we're referring to is a pattern that is distinct from all the other patterns of energy that are around us and that are a part of us and that we are a part of. Because there is nothing around us that we are not connected with, that we are not connected to. This finger shares a gravitational field with the sky, with the flowers. This finger shares an atomic structure with everything around us. It's built up with atoms. This body shares an ecology of energy that we call air. We breathe out food for trees, and we breathe in the byproduct of trees. So trees take in what we breathe out, and they let go of what we breathe in. We're in a series of relationships with everything in existence. We are connected with time, meaning all things in the current narrative originate with a Big Bang, relating to a Big Bang theory. But this poppy, its origins began with the Big Bang. This gold originated with the Big Bang. And everything that we identify with originated with the Big Bang. All space is connected. If you were to truly not just have space, space is something. If you were to truly delete one bit of space, then the entire fabric of space is altered. So the ego is the I that attaches to a distinct series of patterns that marks the boundary between this pattern of energy and this pattern of energy and this pattern of energy and this pattern of energy. Identity is the boundary of the pattern. And a distinct identity is the distinct pattern of thinking, feeling, speaking, doing, and being that defines what we call me, what we call I, and what we call everything else. Now, this pattern is both an illusion and it is real, meaning we have agency, we have influence on this pattern of energy more than this pattern of energy. It's not black and white, though, because we can change what we focus on. We can zoom in on different things. We can affect the identity, the pattern of energy of what's around us. Let's see if we can get this back. So, identity, a pattern of energy that we relate to. Now, it's important to understand the pattern. It's not just one thought, unless we identify with that thought. We have 60,000 thoughts a day. There are certain thoughts that we repeat and repeat and repeat. Those thoughts we identify with, we attach to. The other thoughts just move on by, many of them unconscious. There are many sensations that we experience in a given 24-hour period. Some of those sensations we pay attention to and give meaning to and repeat and identify and attach to. I want more of that, I want less of that. So the ego is that which decides and filters amongst the thoughts, amongst the feelings, amongst the words. What is me? That's the real me. That's me. I'm this person. I think this. I believe this. I feel this. I do this. I say this. The pattern of being covers the entire body structure. Now, a lot of that is quite unconscious. We can say that there is a pattern in this finger, and I can pull on the finger and hit the finger with a hammer and cut the finger off with a knife. I can put the finger in an oven. I can move the finger around. But this pattern of being is much like the environment, the ecology around us, somewhat unconscious. I can change my words. I can say this, 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 and then I can change it to what. I can change the pattern of my words. I can change the pattern of my thoughts. I can change the pattern of my feelings. I can change the pattern of my actions. But the pattern of being is more fundamental. It's a longer lasting pattern. The pattern of being has more weight. A few years ago, I broke my radial head, and after surgery, this is the straightest this elbow can be. So the pattern used to be like this, and now the pattern is like this. It's a pattern of being. That pattern of the molecular structure, the tonal range of a voice, the shape of a face, is influenced by thinking, feeling, speaking, doing. Because, for example, if I eat more sugar and more dairy, then this becomes a little bit more puffy. If I eat more sugar and dairy and don't sleep as well and drink more alcohol and then go out in the pollen, this gets more allergic. I get more sneezy. I blow my nose more, and so the pattern changes. So there's intersection with all the patterns that make up an identity. But other things, can I change the flow of my blood? That's what we might call a template of identity. That's in the pattern of the species, of the family. Now, thoughts are also hereditary. Language is hereditary. But I can learn a new language, but I can't learn a new way to flow blood. Now, that technology is a pattern of thinking, feeling, speaking, doing, and being that changes other patterns. So we are developing technologies, genetic technologies, that might change whether I have 5 or 6 fingers. So identity is a pattern of thinking, feeling, speaking, doing, and being that I attach to, that I identify with. And the I that we're talking about, the part that says this is the boundary that's me, has a continuum of influence on itself and on its ecology. I can zoom in on a poppy, and in doing so, the poppy gets bigger. Or do I get smaller? Or does the world get smaller? But nonetheless, I have the ability to get so focused on a poppy that that's all that I see, that that's all that I experience. That's my entire world, me, the one looking at a poppy. And I can focus on this, and I can focus on that. And so I can influence certain things. And there's other things. If I take a poppy petal and just drop it and say grow, I cannot get that petal to grow into another poppy. But if I invent a technology, a new pattern of thinking, feeling, speaking, doing, and being, that extracts the genetic structure, for example, from the poppy, and injects that structure into something else, into the essence of a seed, a pattern replicator, well then, I may be able to drop that petal and invite another version of the pattern, a replication of the pattern, which, as we zoom out to the big picture, everything in existence is a pattern of energy. Now, a pattern is simply a repetition. That's what a pattern is, a repeat. Seeds are a pattern. The plant produces a seed, the seed produces 2 little leaves, the leaves grow up, flower opens, poppy produces a new seed, and the pattern repeats. People are a pattern. A male and a female have sex, or now that we've developed a new technology, maybe a female gets an injection, a sperm injection, but we haven't gotten the technology to the point where the sperm can be manufactured by the woman. It can just be produced by a man and injected naturally through physical sex or synthetically through a new technology. And then the pattern repeats. The woman gives birth to a new replica of her body, 2 arms, 5 fingers, etc. And so the pattern repeats. So when we call ourselves human, what we're saying is that we carry the pattern of all human beings. Everyone that we think of human, largely speaking, has 2 ears and a nose and arms and has a brain, has a heart, has blood. And these are all patterns of energy. Blood is a pattern of energy. And human blood is a little bit different than rabbit blood, which is a little different than snake blood or whatever it is that goes through snakes, right? So, distinct patterns of energy in an endless ecology of distinct patterns of energy. Every single thing that has ever been or will ever be has a pattern. And that pattern, whether it's an electron revolving around a neutron, whether it's a subatomic particle, that pattern of energy combines with other patterns of energy, combines with other patterns of energy to create everything in existence. And it shares a timescape, it shares a spacescape, it shares many of the common laws, which are just patterns. If you think of a law of physics, it's a habit. What does a habit mean? It means a repeated cycle. So if I pick up this pen and drop it, this pen has a habit. It's a pattern of falling over and over and over again. Gravity is a habit that's been going on for a while. Larger objects attract smaller objects to them. And that habit, which is repeated throughout most of the universe, certainly what we're aware of, that habit that larger objects attract smaller objects, is a habit that facilitates relationship. Because what if larger objects didn't attract smaller objects and they just drifted off endlessly into space? And space just got bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And things drifted further and further apart all the time. What if that just was the law, the habit of the universe? Well, things would have no relationship. This hand would drift away from this hand, the arms would drift off of the body. We would lift off the planet. There would be no development of relationships. But the universe, this universe, has a pattern, a habit of bigger things attracting smaller things and getting bigger and getting bigger and getting bigger, which has the result of increasing complexity. So the more things you bring into relay, to an exchange of energy, the more synergy you have, the more alchemy you have, the more possibility, probability, and actuality you have. The more things you engage in relationship, the bigger the possibility field. So what is possible, probable, and actual keeps getting bigger because this universe has a habit of small things being attracted to big things. Now, this habit repeats itself fractally, meaning the moon is attracted to the earth, and the earth is attracted to the sun in a relay, in a relationship, in a pattern. Individuals are drawn to the biggest party. Potential cult members are drawn to the biggest culture. App users are drawn to the network that has the most players. Big things attract small things. And as a small thing interacts with a big, complex thing, the possibility field expands. So that one habit of the universe is, why not have a habit? I mean, nobody knows why the laws of physics are what they are. We just know that they are. The pen falls. The pen falls. But all habits are subject to change. There may come a time when the exhale becomes the inhale. And the inhale becomes the exhale. Because when we understand that everything has a pattern, everything has a cycle, and that some cycles take milliseconds, and some cycles take minutes, and some cycles take hours, and some cycles take millions of years. Other cycles take billions of years. But what about the trillion-year cycle? What happens a trillion years from now? What if 1, 2, 3 trillion years from now, the cycle reverses? And the gravity, the habit of large objects attracting small objects, becomes the anti-gravity, where large objects repel small objects. And the entire universe gets much bigger and more static as the possibility field decreases, as fewer and fewer interactions take place between fewer and fewer patterns, and people drift apart from groups and have less interactions with each other. These are the people that don't exist, by the way, because life is always changing. There's a pattern, but it's always mutating. And so there's a pattern, there's certainty, and there's variety, there's mutation, there's deviation from the norm, from the pattern. So what is identity? It is a pattern of energy that we, individually and collectively, identify with, attach to, recognize, generate in our minds. If we can't become conscious of the pattern, does it exist as a pattern? And I would say no, because we are looking at patterns through language. We are creating patterns with language. If we look at the language of time, for example, first of all, it's always a circle because it's always a cycle of repetitions, of seconds, minutes, hours, days, months, different cycles, nested within larger cycles, nested within larger cycles, endlessly. We create the language of time arbitrarily. We decide we're going to divide this into 60. Why? Why not 50? We can do that. Why not 10? Why don't we have 10 seconds? We can do that. Why don't we have 1,000,000 seconds? We can do that. We just have to create more words and more lines. And then we count time in a very different way. So does a second exist if instead of this space we delete it and have every other seconds? Well, it no longer exists for us. We're no longer aware of it. And given that there are an infinite number of ways to break time down, and an infinite number of ways to break space down, because why is this an inch? If we do here, we've got a ½ inch. But what if we change the 10-base number system altogether and do a 20-base number system? And what if we delete inches and create cinches? And what if a cinch is every third of a cinch, right? What if we break it down by 3 or by 38 and then repeat that pattern rather than 9 and repeat that pattern? Well, then space looks different. Mathematics looks different. Time looks different. And what if we define a hand by something that has 1, 2, 3, 4 V's of air in between? What's a hand? Well, does it have 1, 2, 3, 4 bits of air? That's a hand. This isn't a hand. This is a hand. That which is around this stuff, which doesn't have a name, or which we call space. What if we just invert those words? See, we begin to lose the pattern that we are familiar with. Now, what is familiar? We begin to lose the pattern of our family. The pattern that we were raised to see, raised to pay attention to. We pay attention to this, not to this, because everyone else does. Because when you learn language, which is the foundation for all thought, you learn what these things are doing and not doing. And you learn that this is a finger. Why don't you call this 4 joints, or 3 joints, whatever it is, or 280 electrons? It's arbitrary. It's no more or less arbitrary than the way we break down time, the way we break down space. And if the last person who breaks time down into 60 seconds dies, and a new generation of watchmakers that have 280 seconds to the minute, well, they'll just cut the minute into 280 slices, give them each a name, give it a different number system. And now the patterns that we identify with will be different. I am the one that says this, and thinks this, and does this. So this is identity.